Hello, I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today I'd like to share with you my anticipation and excitement about a meeting that's scheduled to take place tomorrow with a person I haven't seen in about 45 years. Someone I once interviewed back in the days when I was doing radio interviews at KPFA-FM radio in Berkeley, the Pacifica listener-sponsored radio station, early on in my career. At the time, she introduced herself to me as Timothy Leary's wife, Joanna Leary. Now, we know she really wasn't formally married, and her full correct name is Joanna Harcourt-Smith. About 4 or 5 years ago, she authored a book called Tripping the Bardo with Timothy Leary, and it describes the life that she had together for about 3 or 4 very crucial years. She met Leary in Switzerland after he had already escaped from prison in the United States and was being sought by President Nixon and the DEA. They were eager to rearrest him and put him back into jail. It was a great embarrassment to them that he had managed to escape from prison. And she was with him for an intense period of about 7 weeks, during which time they took LSD, I think, every day, plus a wide variety of other substances, and then flew to Afghanistan, where he was captured again by U.S. drug enforcement agents, flown back to the United States, put into prison, and she worked very hard for years to secure his release. Finally, the only way that he was able to free himself from the situation he was in the confines of the federal government was to actually become an informant, to work with the DEA. And she writes about this in her book. It is very well written, very eloquent. She really has a flair for writing. Tripping the Bardo with Timothy Leary. I recommend the book if you're interested in that period, and perhaps I'll have her right here in this room, in this studio tomorrow. And now subsequently, she's created a podcast called Future Primitive, and I think she has a big focus on ecology, a big focus on spirituality and Buddhism. She's a practicing Buddhist now, and higher consciousness. She's been sober for decades, but in her novel, it's not a novel, it's a true book. It reads like a novel, but it is a memoir. And in it, she, describes a terrible time, the craziness of the 1970s. It really was the 1970s, although we're talking about, I would say, the early 70s, which was really, to my way of thinking, an extension of the 1960s. Her intimacy and closeness with Timothy Leary, she's actually credited as co-author with him of some of his books. And so we might talk about her current interests. We might talk about her book. It'll be very interesting to be with a person I haven't seen in 45 years. And I imagine she may invite me to be interviewed on her podcast. I learned that she was located nearby in Santa Fe because some weeks ago I interviewed Marjorie Woollacott. Many of you, no doubt, have seen some of the Marjorie Woollacott interviews. And it turns out that after Marjorie came here, she drove up to Santa Fe to be interviewed by Joanna and mentioned that she had been with me. And Joanna said, "Oh my gosh, I remember him from so long ago." So now we are reconnecting. I can tell you that when I interviewed her last, she came to make an announcement and did on the radio for all of our listeners at the time that she and Timothy Leary were going to go on a hunger strike until he gets released from prison, because she felt he was being held there on trumped up charges, which I think was probably true to a certain extent. In any case, They didn't have the hunger strike. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, as interesting as this person was and as fascinated as I have always been with Timothy Leary, it was really flaky to make a public announcement that you're going on a hunger strike without any real preparation or ability to follow through. But that was over 4 decades ago, and I have every reason to think that she has matured enormously since that time. So it will be interesting to reflect with her about that period in our lives. And now you may be asking yourself, what's in it for you? Why are you bothering? Why are you bothering to watch me prattle on about Joanna Harcourt-Smith and the time I met her in 1973? Well, think about it. Are there people in your life that you haven't seen for a very, very long time? People with whom you had a significant interaction and then you went your separate ways? Do you wonder sometimes what has become of them? Have you moved in different directions? Have they evolved on their own path as you have on yours? And here's another question for those of you who are old enough to remember the 1970s and the 1960s. What was the significance of that era? It was so important to people of my generation coming of age. In the year 1970, was like 24 years old. I was becoming an adult. The things that were current in the air, the talk of revolution, the anti-war movement, the use of psychedelic drugs, the idea of a spiritual revelation, the booming interest in mysticism in our culture, the craziness, the use of drugs, the other habits that people were into at that time, the sexual revolution that was going on, the social experimentation that was going on. Was it all for naught? Or were there some things of value in that era, things that we would all do well to pay more attention to remind ourselves about? Have we forgotten some of the best aspects of that time? Or have we forgotten some of the worst? It certainly was a time of enormous promise and enormous disappointment. It's worth reflecting on, and I hope to have a chance to do that right here in this room tomorrow with Joanna Harcourt-Smith. And if that happens as planned, I'll be sharing it with you. And in the meantime, this monologue is a little introduction to what may be available in the future. I can't say for sure because I have to feel out her interests and her mood to know what it will be talking about on camera, if anything. But it will be an interesting encounter, presuming that she shows up as scheduled. I'm looking forward to it, and I expect to have more to share with you. Thank you for being with me.